Thank you for joining us today for this celebration of the sesquicentennial. We get to say that a lot in the Walla Walla region. We've had a lot of 150ths in the last couple of decades. The sesquicentennial of the Walla Walla and Columbia Walla Walla and Columbia River Railroad. I don't know if I can say that fast 5 times. That might be a tongue twister. In addition to that, also the wonderful progress that we've had on the exhibit for the Blue Mountain locomotive. And if you haven't seen that yet, you'll get a chance in just a few minutes. Now the question is, how do we get to here where we're sitting right here today? Well, let me kind of summarize the history in a few little points here. On October 23rd, 1875, Dr. Dorsey Baker completed the Walla Walla and Columbia River Railroad between Walla Walla and the Columbia River at Wallula. A few years later, he brought in additional locomotive. 1878, the Blue Mountain locomotive arrived in Walla Walla. It is the oldest surviving locomotive in the state of Washington, and actually its configuration makes it unique in the United States. Not another one like it. And it's a Walla Walla artifact. That's pretty darn cool. During the 1860s gold rush, Walla Walla was a happening place. Most of the folks that were miners came through Walla Walla. It was the staging ground where you'd pick up supplies and food. If you were a merchant, it was a good time to be here. Your $1 shovel might sell for $3 or $4. Flour, wheat flour, was known as white gold. Miners didn't produce food or go hunting. They spent all their time panning for gold. After this economic boom subsided, and only lasted for a few years, that gold rush, Walla Walla needed some way to improve the ability to export products, especially that wheat. The completion of the Walla Walla and Columbia River Railroad helped the Walla Walla region become known as the breadbasket of the world. So within a few decades, we were producing as much wheat here as anywhere in the world. Pretty amazing. Now that narrow gauge railroad was replaced after a short while with a standard gauge, and the Blue Mountain was then used there. Dorsey did a run down to the south and one to the east. It was used there for a while, but then eventually it was no longer being used. And in the 1890s, it was purchased and shipped up to Alaska to be used in the 1890s Yukon Gold Rush. There's a gold theme with this railroad. After that was over, it kind of sat around for a while, not being used, and then eventually the locomotive was thrown into the Arctic Ocean off the shores of Nome, Alaska, as part of the sea break to keep those waves from crashing the shore and eroding the bank away. Salt water is not a friend of iron and steel. Fortunately, our friends at the Washington State Railroad and Historical Society in Pasco learned of this, and they did a rescue mission. And they purchased that locomotive, and they got it sent down to Pasco, and then they spent a few years starting to work on it. We then had an opportunity to partner with the Washington State Railroad Historical Society to bring the locomotive over to Walla Walla to have it on exhibit. The plan was to have it here for a decade so the community could see it, and then we would slowly do some work on it. Well, unfortunately, that group, which was very small, they kind of aged out, and they existed no more. And at that point in time, the locomotive was transferred to Fort Walla Museum, so now it belongs to our community, which is wonderful, and we can do everything that we want to do with it. Numerous museum volunteers and historic train experts began adding parts to the locomotive, such as the cab and the cow catcher. However, because we didn't have protection, there wasn't a cover on that. We put tarps on it in the wintertime, but that really wasn't adequate. We started seeing some of our brand new work disintegrating. That wasn't good, so we needed to have some type of cover for that. Last year, the museum contacted First Megan Club to get a contact with the Baker family, and the descendants of Dorsey Baker said this would be a great project. They wanted to do something to commemorate the 150th anniversary of this railroad, and an exhibit on the only surviving locomotive was a perfect fit for that. So it was a win-win for the museum, the family, and most importantly, our community. And our visitors. Tourism is important too. We like those tourism dollars. So thanks to the generous support of Baker family descendants, numerous community members, local businesses, and some grants, more than $300,000 have been raised for this stage of the work. Pretty darn impressive. Now at this time, I'd like to introduce a few folks. Some of you know that Fort Wall Museum has a top secret time machine. And we use that to bring folks from our past to the present to help share stories so we can figure out where we came from, so we know where we're at, and we can figure out where we're going. History is really important, and we actually get some of the people that lived it sharing their stories. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Dorsey and Elizabeth Baker and one of the longtime employees on the Walla Walla and Columbia River Railroad, William Tye.
Come down. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dorsey Baker. I'm a banker in this town, but I want to tell you my real passion is building. I like to building things that are important to the development of wherever I'm living. I have built a couple of grist mills in some Oregon towns, and I'm planning on building a flume up in the mountains to get the lumber down. But my heart isn't. I am really interested in getting a railroad to this town. It's been talked about quite a while, and now we have formed a corporation, some of my peers and myself, and we've got permission and authorized to issue a bond issue for $300,000 to begin the railroad, and we had that election day come and gone. 2/3 of the people of this county had to approve it, and it failed. It failed by a slim margin. So what do we do now? I was determined we're going to build this railroad. Some people said, well, I guess we have to give up. But no, that's not really my nature to give up when I've decided something important has to be done. It's going to be really important because do you know the Teamsters are charging the farmers $13 a ton to take their wagon load of sacks down to the Wallula where the steamboat landing is, and then they got to pay the Oregon Steam Navigation Company $5 a ton to float it on down the river to Portland where the market is. We needed something much more efficient, much more economical to do. A railroad would be the way to do it. But we were kind of wondering, what are we going to do? How are we going to raise our money? And then we got some really good news. The Northern Pacific was planning on putting 2 lines in Washington Territory, one of them from Vancouver to Seattle, and the other from Walla Walla to Wallula. Well, that didn't happen because they had so much trouble on that line on the west coast over there, and they went in the hole. They lost money on that, so they said, we're not going to do that same thing again in Walla Walla. But they had hired a surveyor. His name was General James Tilton, and he had surveyed the entire route for a standard gauge locomotive and tracks. And all of the little bridges and curves and everything, and the little knolls he had to scrape out and the depressions you had to fill up. He had to come up with a figure of just under $694,000. And the railroad said, we're not going to do that. But we're going to give these plans to whoever's capable of building a railroad, and we already had this corporation. And so they gave those plans to us, and they were good plans. We were able to work for them on the roadbed, but we could not afford to build a standard gauge railroad. And I had grown up in Illinois, and I had seen some narrow gauge railroads back there, and I thought, gosh, that would be a tremendous savings if we could do that. Well, I took my wife and child, and we went back to the States, and she stayed with her folks and had a good visit, but I went on to the East Coast and went up and down the East Coast looking at narrow gauge railroads. And wow, were my eyes opened when I spotted a couple with wooden rails with iron straps fastened to the top. They were 1/2 inch thick, 2 inches wide. I thought, another savings. This is getting more doable all the time. And then I went to Pittsburgh to the Bell company that made it was a factory, a big complex making locomotives. And I ordered 2 little 04-aughts. And for you folks that don't know what an 04-aught means, it just means we have 2 driving wheels on each side of the locomotive. No smaller wheels up front, no smaller wheels under the cab. And I ordered 2 of them. And I already had a name in my mind for them. I was going to call one the Walla Walla and the other the Wallula. Well, they weighed 7.5 tons. I paid $4,400 each for them. And then I had what I thought was a pretty good idea. We will save a little more money if we do not put a cow catcher on them. We'll put a platform on there, and I'll have my son Frank train a dog to chase the cows or whatever's on the path of the railroad, because we weren't going very fast on that railroad. And then if the dog got tired, he'd just jump on that little platform. Well, the first 2 locomotives never had cow catchers. Well, then I came back, and I got some crews together. And I sent a crew up in the upper reaches of the Yakima River in the forest, had them falling trees up there and floating them down the Yakima River to the Columbia River to a big eddy right near Wallula, where I had another crew building a sawmill. And my son Frank ran that sawmill. And so I had another crew out there with these Fresnos. And the Fresno was just a flat-bottom scoop that pulled by mules or horses or oxen or whatever you had. To level the track, and we were making pretty good progress. We were starting from Wallula, working towards Walla Walla, and we got about halfway, and I realized we were going to run out of money. So I came back to the Walla Walla city, and I said, you know, you folks, can you give us some money to finish this railroad? They said, no. So now what do we do? Well, I talked to my peers, you know, the people that are involved with me in building this railroad, and I said, we're going to have to dig deep into our own pockets, and we'll go as far as we can till we actually run out of money. Well, that took us up to what you folks know as Whitman Station, and that's where we ran out of money. But I had a great idea. How are we going to get the people of Walla Walla interested in finishing this railroad? And I thought, oh, we'll just invite as many as want to come to a free ride down to Wallula, a big banquet down there in our warehouse. We'll have boats on the river for the more adventurous ones, and the more timid ones, they can walk the shores and pick up pretty rocks, and then we'll bring them back all free. Well, this was at what you guys know as Whitman Station, where we started. Because to get to Whitman Station, it was all level ground. People could bring the horse and buggies out there and leave them at a ranch. And we took them down there at 2 hours to get down there. And at 5 o'clock, that little Walla Walla locomotive went doo-doo, you know, and the people got back on. But I tell you what, we never had cushioned seats. We had got the running gear, the wheels, and that sort of thing from back east, and we built our own box cars, our own flat cars. We even made a passenger car, and they had hard wooden seats inside. But the people got the idea that this railroad is meaningful, and it's going to happen. All we got to do is maybe help them raise some more money, because I told them the terminal is going to be at Whitman Station unless you can give us the money to bring it on into Walla Walla town. Well, you know what? They did. They gave us the money, and we brought it into Walla Walla town. And on October 23rd, 1875, that little Walla Walla engine, towing some cars, come chugging into Walla Walla, and introduced and entered us into the modern age of transportation. And that's my story, and I appreciate you being here to hear it, and thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Milliken Baker. You might know that I am Dorsey Baker's third wife. First, he married Caroline Tibbetts, and after producing 4 children, died at the age of 29. Then Dr. Baker went back east and married Mary Leger. She became ill on their journey to Walla Walla, arrived here, and died a short time later. You might think he would give up on marriage after such bad experiences, but in 1867, he married me, possibly to be a mother to those 3 rambunctious boys and sweet little Mary. Yes, those boys. But I got my revenge. I've already had 5 girls, and I plan to have more. I've always been a great supporter of Dr. Baker's railroad. In 1871, he asked me if I could go back east with him to investigate engines, and I said, of course. There were complications. It was December. I had a 6-month-old baby, little Henrietta, but I was willing. We went by stagecoach. It was cold. It was snowy. It was icy. Our seats in the coach, no cushions, hard, bare, rough boards, bumpy ride for 9 days. And so cold. We were able to stop in Union, Oregon, and at least get another blanket for poor little Etta. 9 days of traveling, we finally arrived to where we could start taking trains for the rest of our journey, which was not traveling in the lap of luxury, I assure you. In fact, the last leg of our journey was in a caboose. But got there we did, and Dr. Baker did his business, investigated railroads, found what he wanted. I saw some family. We had a lovely Christmas dinner. And what seemed like a short time later, we were ready to return and do the trip in reverse. Fortunately, it was without incident. Yes, it was a challenging journey. There were problems. But when people asked me, well, how was that journey? I'd say, well, mostly I consider it a pleasure trip. Thank you.
My name is William Tye, and I'm a conductor on Doc's Railroad. I think there are a lot of words that describe Doc, and one of them is innovative, one of them is resourceful, one of them is determined. The one I know him best by is frugal. And I would tell you that I've been with the railroad since we began laying track, such as it was, from Wallula to here. And in 1872, the first thing we laid down was some wood with strap iron on top of it. We unloaded our 2 engines onto it, and we used them to haul every morning the stuff that we needed to finish building the railroad. Slowly but surely, we made our way east. More than once, we would get up in the morning, and as we tried to make our way even further east, we'd have to clean off the sand that accumulated on the rails. And there was sagebrush, there were rattlesnakes, there were coyotes, there were all kinds of problems that we used to have. But slowly but surely, we made our way east, and in 1874, 2 years after we started, we made it all the way to the little hamlet of Touchy. And at Touchy, that's about as far as we could get for the moment, because there was some funding problems, and by 1873 there were some problems with financing back east. And you may have all remember the Depression of 1873. It slowed us up a bit, and there were some moments when we thought maybe that's as far as the railroad would go. But sure enough, Doc, in his resourcefulness and his frugality in using no wasted money on things like solid steel rail and water towers and depots and things like that, we were able to continue on. In 1874, we got as far as Whitman, and as Doc told you, there was some consternation with us because there was no money to continue on. And he went to the people here in town and he said, can you give me some money to finish this railroad? It'll be an economic boon to you. And they were reluctant to do it. And so Doc, being the clever, resourceful man that he was, and frugal, he said, I'm going to head south. He said, I'll head down to Milton and Blue Mountain Station and Centerville and those places. And sure enough, the people in town said, maybe we could kick in a few bucks. And we continued on into Walla Walla. We made it to Walla Walla. And it was a 10-mile stretch, and we did it in less than a year. It was an amazing journey to do. Now, I know some of you that have lived in this area have had some problems with our railroad, and tomorrow I'm going to be talking about those problems and what we can do to make it better for you and us. But one thing I do want to tell you is keep your horses off the track. It's a problem. I mean, we don't want to hit it, and you don't want it to be hit, but some people just insist on letting their cows and horses run across our tracks, and that can be awfully messy. In fact, that might be where we got that original name of the Walla Walla and Columbia River Railroad. A lot of stuff laying around. Well, I'm going to head off into the depot. It's my turn to take the train into Walla Walla tonight, into Wallula, and I hope you join us tomorrow, and I'll tell you more about that adventure.
Can we get another round of applause for our reenactors? They did a great job. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Tom Campbell, and I have the honor of being the Baker Family Forum Chairman and distinct privilege of thanking all of you for being here today. Give yourselves a round of applause for being here. About a year ago, a few members of the sixth generation of the Baker family in Walla Walla, of which I am proud to count myself a member, gathered at the Green Lantern to consider how we might, as a family, commemorate the upcoming 150th anniversary of the completion of the Walla Walla and Columbia River Railroad by our great-great-great-grandfather, Dr. Dorsey Singh Baker. A couple of beers into that conversation, my cousin, Elizabeth Hill, who is with us today, asked us to contemplate if Dr. Baker would be proud of the family and our efforts toward improving the community of Walla Walla, which encouraged us to think big. And remembering that we had heard that James Payne at Fort Walla Walla Museum had recently reached out to our fifth generation cousin Megan Clubb to ask for assistance from the Baker family in building a modest shelter to protect the Blue Mountain locomotive from the elements, we began contemplating how we might be able to meet that request in a way that would appropriately honor Dr. Baker's legacy in Walla Walla, and we set out at that time on a project to construct the shelter we are gathered here to dedicate today. I'm particularly proud and privileged today to acknowledge the Baker family members, including Dr. Baker's heirs and extended family, many of whom are with us today, who have contributed generously to this cause. If we can get a round of applause for them. I am equally grateful to recognize our general contractors, Larney Opp and Ken Siebold, as key and instrumental to the success of this project. Larney is unable to be here today, but Ken If you would come forward, we have a small token of our appreciation for your tireless efforts here. Is Ken here? Yeah, no. We've put together a little plaque and some photographs and one of the coins for you, and we got another one for Larney too when we get a chance to get it to him. But thank you so much for all your efforts and swinging that hammer. I'd also like to recognize Skylar Rude and the Washington Legislative Community Fund, as well as Walla Walla County Commissioners Fulmer, Clayton, and Kimball, the Walla Walla County Community Outreach Fund, and Wild Horse Foundation for their generous support. Other donors, financial and in-kind, that we must be recognized, including our restoration volunteers, James Temple, Ron Kraus, George Carpenter, Dick Phillips, and last but certainly not least, Dwight Stephenson, who we recently lost in a tragic accident. I also want to recognize the Fort Walla Walla Museum staff involved in this effort, James Payne and Grover Snell, as well as Cascadia Schneider. Finally, I must thank my cousins Megan Clubb, Elizabeth Hill, and Ed Quaddle for their work to raise awareness and the funds to complete the project. And in-kind donors, Eddie and Andrea Unk for the shelter roof, Nelson Construction for erecting the shelter, my brother, Ryan Campbell, for his architectural services, and Paul Dedalius and the Columbia Rail, as well as all of our guests and community supporters for their attendance here today and their involvement and support, with special thanks to the local schools who helped with the student projects that we'll be honoring shortly. Thank you for indulging me in recognizing these parties, without whom today would not have been possible. One more round of applause for everyone who worked so hard on this. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce my cousin, Megan Clubb.
All right, thank you, Tom. So I have some people that I just want to thank, as you heard. Ed Quaddle, who couldn't be with us today. Elizabeth Hill, raise your hand. There she is, helping with the fundraising. And the other person I want to recognize is Gail Kimball, who's here. Gail, do you mind raising your hand? So you heard the journey that James talked about, where we were able in the early 2000s to get the Pasco group to allow us to bring Old Blue here. And Gail was instrumental in the process of raising the money that it took, and we also she helped organize additional businesses that helped get Old Blue here in the first place. So Gail, thank you for that work. I just want to point out on the donor wall up here, I know you can't exactly read it, but the names here at the top are all the family members. And when James contacted me and asked if I would be willing to help spearhead an effort, would the family join in this ability to get this amazing exhibit in place, it was an automatic yes. And I have to say, you can see there were many, many, many Baker family members who said, yes, 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 we will support it. And then Doc Baker believed in the power of collaboration, as you heard. And so we approached this whole project in that exact manner. Not only did the family get involved, but we involved and asked, and they were so generous of providing both in-kind support, those businesses that helped build the structure, the grant funds that came in from nonprofits, and then, as was mentioned, basically the state of Washington and our county commissioners. So before I turn it over, I'd like to have Gunnar Fulmer come up from the County Commission, and just want to make one kind of final remark. People might ask you, and I thought to myself, you know, why is this project so important? And for me, it just gives you an understanding of the incredible challenges that our ancestors went through, and the amazing resilience, you know, of these people and their ingenuity and just their willingness to get hard things done. And I think the second thing is to have this exhibit in this form hopefully will inspire those that come and visit it to think about being entrepreneurial and think about how they, in their own ways, can make this community strong from generation to generation. So, great project, amazing collaborative support, and one of those strong supporters were County Commissioners. I don't know, is Bertha here? There she is, and Todd, the 3 County Commissioners, and I'll turn it over to you for just a moment.
Well, as she said, my name's Gunnar Fulmer. I'm one of your 3 county commissioners. We've got Commissioner Clayton right back there and Commissioner Kimball right over here. I happen to be the chair this year, so I get the honor to speak to you fine folks today. And what an amazing treat this has been today. You know, we get a lot of requests in the county for funds, money for projects. And as you might imagine, you know, there's not that much money to go around. And so it usually generates quite the conversations between commissioners on whether or not we should fund something or not fund something. And it's always sad when we can't fund, but we can't fund everything. That's just reality. But this project, when it came in, didn't get a lot of discussion, but in a good way. And that is that there wasn't really any pushback from any of the 3 commissioners on whether or not we were going to find the money to fund this project. And so it whipped right through, and we funded it. We are super excited about it. It is going to be an absolute treasure for Walla Walla and the kids that get to come see it. I can remember coming through the museum when I was a kid at Prospect Point, and I can still remember the things that I got to look at and how cool that was. But we didn't have anything like this. And I can't imagine as a small child, when it's done, to get a chance to look at that and inspire young kids to join the railroad or be a conductor or who knows what. But that is going to be a really cool gem for Walla Walla. And you know, as stated before, it'll be great for the folks that come visit us, but it's really great for us, and that's really neat. So, you know, as I listened to them talk about Dr. Baker, I couldn't help but to think of our current fight, and that is to finish Highway 12 from Walla Walla to Wallula. So something to think about, and I've got to give a shout out to Commissioner Kimball. He has fought tirelessly for that, getting ready to go again real shortly back to D.C. as our legislators, our senators, and our commissioners fight to get that project done. And I don't know how much you guys know about that, but we got challenged, the committee that is running this and doing this fight. They got challenged, and they were told by the state of Washington, if you get federal funds, we'll match it. That's what they said. They went and got a lot of federal funds. And in fact, they got the most that's ever been given for this kind of project. And then the state kind of went, oh. Well, we got to talk about this. So they continue to fight. We will continue to fight to get that highway done, but I couldn't help put these two together, very, very similar, so that we can bring people to our lovely Walla Walla and allow our Walla Walla folks to get out safer, maybe a little faster. And of course, as most of you know, when we raise the highway up, Walla Walla is so beautiful when we're up at the top instead of down at the bottom. So we'll continue that fight, but thank you.
On behalf of the Fort Walla Walla Museum Board, staff, and volunteers, I want to thank Baker Board Bank. They've been a longtime partner in many ways. They manage our special project funds, keeping them safe. They manage a good chunk of our endowment monies, which we're always willing to accept a few more of. And their support on this project and the sponsorship for this day. So let's thank the bank for sponsoring the day. Now, at this time, I'd like to invite Kip Kontos to say a few words.
Well, 6 years ago, Baker Boyer also got to celebrate our 150th anniversary, so we're really excited to be able to be part of this celebration as well. Now, a lot's changed since Doc Baker founded both of these companies, but a lot's also been the same. And one of those big pieces is we've had really strong community leaders in this valley that have really understood the mutual benefit of giving back to the community, building it stronger, and making it just such a wonderful place to live. And that's really important for us all to keep in mind going forward. And it's one of the things that we try to do at the bank is also to continue to evolve to the community's needs. Doc Baker started out with just a real simple safe, and now we've explored into these DS Baker Advisor services, really partnering with businesses and individuals and helping them achieve their needs and plan for the future. With that, I'll just leave you with a quick quote from the 150 Years of Pioneer book. It's, "Fortunately for Walla Walla, ever since the first trickle of westward immigrants to the Pacific Northwest in the late 1840s, the Walla Walla Valley has proved fertile ground for bold thinking people to build a thriving community." Thank you for coming.
Hi, so my name's Groover Snell. I work here at the museum, and I'll let Amy introduce herself.
Amy Hess, I'm a member of the Baker family.
So when we started this project, another really important part that the committee wanted to do was to make this a learning opportunity for kids now. So we met with the superintendent and the Walla Walla Public Schools district staff to craft. We got help crafting essay prompts, other project prompts, and you've probably noticed all the artwork out there. So we wanted this to be an opportunity for kids to really dig deep into history, to get maybe a few people interested in how to do historical research. And some of those people might, one day want to work at a place like Fort Walla Walla Museum where you get to do that kind of thing. So it's that we're building the next generation of historians, of good Walla Walla citizens, the next generation of train nuts, or more politely, rail fans. This is the golden opportunity to do that, and we've been really pleased with seeing the wide variety of different things kids add to coloring pages. It's pretty fun to go and look at all of them in detail. I wanted to thank the Walla Walla Public Schools staff, especially Casey Monahan. Teresa Salemi, a teacher at Pioneer, helped a lot with this too, and the coloring page was made by a museum volunteer, Margaret Jameson. And thank you to all the students that took part in this. They did a lot of hard work. A lot of supportive parents helped them with that. And we have for the art projects, we have a few prizes. We had some prizes donated. A lovely gift basket from the Dayton Historical Depot, and you can see their table back there. Big Cheese gift certificates. The game Ticket to Ride, book and game donated. And a certificate, $130 certificate for the Eagle Cap excursion train. So if you're ever in Elgin, hop on at the depot. It's a very fun ride. A couple hours out and back. It's well worth the ride. Sometimes when you go, they have train robbers, so you got to watch out for that. We're going to. Every student who submitted something was entered into a very special hat. We have a very special hat here, and this will determine who gets these prizes. So, Amy, would you do the honors?
Would love to. Okay, for the Big Cheese gift certificate, we have Lily from the Milton Freewater YMCA after-school program. Then for the book and game, board game, Ticket to Ride, we have
So, some of the names on the back of the coloring pages were hard to read. This one, I think, is Medellin.
Yep, from Davis Elementary School, 3rd grade. I was never going to pronounce that right. And for the Dayton Historical Depot gift basket, we have Clarabelle from Davis Elementary, 3rd grade. And finally, the Eagle Cap Excursion Train Ride. We have another Davis Elementary 3rd grader, Ruth. Give them a round. We'll get the prizes to them.
And Davis Elementary, the entire 3rd grade submitted coloring pages, and one of our living history volunteers actually gave 6 classroom presentations to each of their classrooms as Dorsey Baker as part of this project.
Okay, and we had several middle schooler and high schoolers write essays for us. Really some amazing work, very impressive to see all the research and time and effort they put into these projects and how different the information was. They really focused on different aspects, and I learned a lot as I was reading through them. It was really great. So for the middle school award, we have Corrigan Moore, who will receive $200 for his winning essay. Corrigan can't be with us today, but he did submit a video acknowledging the award, and I believe that'll be posted on the museum's website in the coming days. So congratulations to Corrigan. And for the high school essay winner, we have Noelle Farnham. She had a wonderful essay and will receive a $1,000 prize for her hard work. Noelle, you want to come up and...
I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming here. I feel like really lucky to have an establishment like the museum here in our community. I actually had a lot of fun writing my essay. I know that probably doesn't sound like the truth, but history's always been my favorite subject, and I think that I feel really lucky personally to have grown up my whole life in a region that has such rich history, and especially lucky to have places like this where the history is actually presented and honored the way that I think it should be. Thank you.
So we're getting close to the end, but before we go outside for our final event, which is to ring the bell on Old Blue together, I'd like to invite Ryan Campbell, who was the architect on the project, up to give you some examples of how this exhibit was thought about, because it was really his brainstorm.
It was the brainstorm of many people on this committee. So this is what you'll see today is a very simple structure with a very complex program that was involved with it. Of course, we wanted to deal with protection from the elements, security, and accessibility. But it also needed to be a platform for viewing and learning. It needed to be not just a building to enclose an exhibit, but it needed to be part of the exhibit itself. So all these functions needed to come together. And we reviewed several options, weighing each of their success in addressing the program. And the steering committee selected the structure that you're going to see today. As of today, construction is approximately 75% complete. Ken, I think that's about right. The timber frame structure was fabricated outside of Portland, Oregon, shipped on the site, and erected under the watchful eyes of Larniop and Ken Siebold, and we owe them everything for this project. They have been so helpful. The wood viewing platform is currently under construction now. You'll see the frame that I believe is what Ken was out there working on last night as we were leaving the site. After that, the roofing materials will be completed. The wrought iron fence will be installed from column to column around the structure to provide the security that was needed. And then information and learning signs will be placed not only at the entrance to the exhibit, but also along the viewing platform as you're viewing the train. Once the tender is complete, which is currently under construction, the train, believe it or not, it can still roll forward. And thanks in large part to the contributions of the Columbia Rail and Paul Dedelius, who I think I see out there today, who I haven't seen for a very long time. They have helped extend the rails, so the locomotive will be moved forward, and the tender will be put in place, and that will complete the exhibit.
So the next part of and the final concluding part of our celebration, we're all going to go out and gather at Old Blue. I'd love my Baker family cousins to join me on the platform that Ken completed last night at 6 o'clock. It's not there's a lot more of our family members that have come to Walla Walla from all sorts of places to attend, so there may not be enough space for all of you, but let's gather as many of the Baker family members as we can up on the platform. We're going to ring the bell, and then if I can, I'd like to have the Baker family members gather around the train. We'll give you instructions at that time, and we're going to take some photos. So anyway, again, collaborative work, that's how big things get done. I'm so grateful for everybody that participated and gave all their energy to this project. Let's go out and enjoy where we are today. I had on my list, and I missed a very key person in thanking, and that's Jan Darrington, who is right here with us. I will only tell you that one of my personal traits is not organization, and thank God that Jan helped not only Ed and Elizabeth and myself in our fundraising efforts, but the event committee and everything. She is the glue that held this entire project together for the last year. So thank you, Jan. Okay. I don't have any song to sing, but I'm going to go back here. The bell is a little bit tricky. I'm going to go back here and do a little. Hey, listen.
Can you get a name? Yeah, it looks like. Do you need just about everyone? Here.